are Locked On Falcons POSTCAST, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day.
So, guys, it's us, Jarvis Davis over there, myself, Aaron Freeman, Locked On Falcons. Jarvis from ATL Day Ones and Locked On Sports Atlanta. We're going to try to do the best we can to give you the reaction to this game. We were just talking right before we went on. We've never had to immediately react to one of these Falcons blown leads. They lose this game 27-26 final score. Really solid start for the Falcons, really controlled this game in the first half. And then, of course, the fourth quarter had to come. You got to play 4 quarters, and the Falcons chose to not play 4 quarters. Defensive collapse late in the game. Offense had opportunities to sort of close out this game. A 3rd and 1, they botched the snap. Mariota gets stuff. It just seemed like, as usual, when it comes to the Falconing, Jarvis, everything that could have gone wrong basically went wrong for the Falcons at the end of the game.
No doubt about it. This is a Falcony loss. Like, that's the only way I can describe this, because when you think about it, it was a one particular drive when they were up 2 scores and the Saints just got the football, and you start seeing them just basically force feeding Michael Thomas. And you know who was guarding Michael Thomas? AJ Terrell. Like, he was guarding him, on most of those completions. So that's one of the things that kind of makes you kind of like, all right, at the end of the day, AJ Terrell, you had an opportunity to make a play, and you absolutely did not do that. And when you think about, like, the defense just looked different, right? Because what did we see the whole entire game? I even tweeted it out during the game at Jarvis D90, by the way. If you want to give me a follow, and NFL fans, check my boy Aaron Freeman out as well. You saw pressures. You saw him showing blitz, backing out of it. You saw guys coming through. You saw Richie Grant coming free through the offensive line. You saw Michael Walker getting a sack. And you just saw everybody getting involved in this defense. And then on that particular drive, when they were up 2 scores, they started force feeding Michael Thomas. And all you saw was rush 4, dropping 7 in their coverage. And that's not how you got to this point. And that when you start doing things that didn't get you there, that's when you end up getting in trouble. And we've seen it, like we said, we've seen this movie before, Aaron. This is exactly what that's exactly what I expected. If you're going to continue to play their soft zones and play those soft coverages, because Jameis Winston will eat you alive if you don't give it same pressure. Because like a high school quarterback up until that point. And yeah, that's exactly what they did. They just marched that bad boy right on down the field on that particular drive, and marched that bad boy right down the field on the following drive.
Yeah, and as Jarvis put it, the Falcons were up 26-10 with, I believe, about 12 and a half minutes left in the fourth quarter. Then the Saints put together a 4-play, 75-yard touchdown drive, get the 2-point conversion. The Falcons had done an excellent job up to that point, not giving up any explosive plays, and the Saints got 3 of them on that 1-4-play drive. Then the Falcons failed to really move the ball in their next drive, and then the Saints marched down the field again to get an 8-play, 86-yard touchdown drive to cut the lead to 26-24. The Falcons did get a stop on that 2-point conversion, but then they had another opportunity to sort of salt away the game. They were able to get it down to the 2-minute warning. They got a holding call against the Saints that gifted them a first down. And then, they got it to a point where it was 3rd and 1. Mariota just has to basically field that clean snap. All these things that you're saying, Jarvis, are 100% right. The defense did a collapse, but then the offense has an opportunity just to basically, despite that collapse, seal it. They can't do it. Not to put the blame on Marcus Mariota, because it was a complete team loss is the thing. But it just came down to that one play, that if they just convert that one play, you have to believe that the Falcons wind up winning this game, and they are unable to do that. And then, of course, the defense gives up a big play. Casey Hayward gives up a 40-yard bomb to Jarvis Landry. Winston just basically heaves up a throw into double coverage, and they just mistimed the throw. Landry comes down with it, and that basically sets up what winds up being the game-winning field goal from Will Lutz from 51 yards. So I don't know. Is there anything else? Do we want to flip the script and try to talk about some of the positives here, Jarvis, before we wrap up? Because
Can
we
I
can
just pour my heart out for a second, Aaron?
go ahead, my friend.
Here's the thing, man. Like we're literally sitting up there. I'm literally sitting up here watching this game. I'm just, this does not look like the normal Falcons. I'm talking about, like, from the defensive standpoint, on the Ebiketie getting home, getting the sack. Lorenzo Carter, Grady Jarrett, absolutely just dominating throughout, that first half of the game. He exceeded his sack total in 2021 in the first half of the game. Like, it's just truly, truly frustrating when you see teams go away from what has been working from them. That's my concern, right? Like, that's my biggest concern. Like, yeah, the fumble snap, I get it, 3rd and 1. Yeah, you got to get that back there. You can't turn into James Stone, on that particular play. You got to get the ball to your quarterback. And Marcus Mariota got to stay as long as he possibly can to make sure he gets that football. True. But when your defensive coordinator, the guy who is talking about that gummit, we don't want to be one of the worst teams in the league, you fall back into that by switching it up. Like, I don't like that. I don't care what kind of justification he has for that. Like, Dean Pease, you cannot go away from what got you there. I will continue to emphasize that, because it's just unacceptable. Because, like, guess what happened if one of your guys gets beat, right, when you send in that pressure? People gonna be like, all right, cool. That's like, hey, keep it going. Like, let's keep it going. Let's make a play, because you just saw the looks on those guys' faces out there. They kind of understood. They kind of went right back into that mode. Like, oh, here we go again.
Yep. So Jarvis is giving you his freshest take. I'm doing my best to give you my freshest take, but who always keeps it fresh? That is our good friends at Coffee AM, the freshest coffee you can get. High quality roasted coffee that ships same day so that you get it fresh. They have a huge selection of coffee from around the world, whether you want expertly crafted blends, espresso flavored coffees, even gourmet teas, whatever you want. I know Jarvis is a big fan of the Rainforest Crunch that comes with like vanilla and macadamia nut and all this good tropical goodness. I'm a big fan of the Highlander grog. It's flavored with Scottish brandy and in favor of long snapper Liam McCullough, although he had a penalty in this game that makes me, I might switch to the Rainforest Crunch tomorrow morning with Coffee AM. But so we'll see what Coffee AM has in store for me on tomorrow. You guys can also find out what's in store for you by going to coffeeam.com/lockedon today to check out their full menu of coffees, teas, and gift sets. That's coffeeam.com/lockedon, or use the promo code LockedOn15 at checkout. Coffee AM is the best small batch coffee roaster in America. So, Jarvis, we just talked about all the things that went wrong. The Falcons got soft there at the end after playing 3, not perfect, but 3 good quarters of football where it was clear that they were the better team on Sunday. You've already mentioned some of the things that went well for them. The Falcons had a formidable pass rush in the early part of the game. I believe they sacked Jameis Winston 4 times. Yeah. They were able to create some turnovers. They were able to run the football. We talked about this all summer long. It was about the battle in the trenches, right? We said if the Falcons can win the battle in the trenches, they will have a chance to win the game. And they were able to do that until the very end. And I don't think that's because the players weren't good enough. As you said, Jarvis, that was because maybe some scheming, getting a little too soft, not being as aggressive. But the Falcons finished the game with 201 yards rushing. A lot of that coming from not only Cordero Patterson's career high 120 yards rushing. Marcus Mariota had 72 yards rushing. What were some of the things that you saw that at least we can sit here and say, hey, let's look at the first 3 quarters of this game. Here are the positives. If we just can do this for 4 quarters, as opposed to just throw away the game tape from that 4th quarter. What were some of the other positives that stood out to you in those first 3 quarters?
I would have to go ahead and say Drake London, right? Like, there was a lot of questions coming into this game saying whether or not, okay, is he healthy? Is he healthy enough to play? Okay, he's healthy enough to play, but are they going to limit him? We're going to have to give him a snap count. But, he ended up with 5 catches for 74 yards, had a big 3rd down catch, right after the Saints had brought the game within 1 score. And I think that, to sustain that drive, that was kind of a big deal. So I think that Drake London was a guy that really stood out to me, offensively, because so many questions were coming in about his health and whether or not he'd be able to go. He comes in, he gets 7 targets, 5 catches for 74 yards. I think that's something that, it looks promising. But, also on the defensive side, I think Taquan Graham, not necessarily showing up on the stat sheet for the most part, but he played well today. He played really well. And I think that, that's a guy that, a lot of people had a lot of questions about whether or not he was going to be able to be the starter. And I think that he kind of solidified that today by continuing to, take that, make progress in his early on career.
Another player stood out, Michael Walker. We talked about him earlier this week, about him needing to sort of step up now that he's kind of quarterbacking the defense. 2 tackles for loss, a sack in this game, a number of tackles as well. I think he finished with 6 tackles. I think Richie Grant led the team with 10 tackles in this game. Again, if you just kind of ignore that fourth quarter, a really solid game for the Falcons.
Which is so hard to do. It's so hard to do. It's so hard to do, Aaron.
It's so
hard, man.
I mean, the offensive line stepped up.
Man, just like, oh my God, what just happened?
Offensive line stepped up. Mariota had plenty of time to throw, plenty of time to run around, make plays. Again, the running game was clicking. We saw the physical style of offense that Arthur Smith wants to run. You saw the mobility at the quarterback, a lot of bootlegs, a lot of play action. The Falcons were able to generate explosive plays. You were right. Drake London stepped up big because Kyle Pitts was pretty quiet in this game. Only had, I think, 2 catches for 19 yards. But the Falcons were able to find other playmakers. Drake London had 5 catches for 74 yards. As mentioned, Zacchaeus had 4 catches, 49 yards. Kadero Hodge had 3 catches for 38 yards. Patterson, 3 catches, 16 yards. So they were able to spread the ball around and play that 2 tight end stuff. So again, 3 quarters of good, 1 quarter of terribleness. And it's classic Falcons. So, there's things that they can look at from this game as positives that we can move forward and say, okay, we need to do a better job. And if we can just do a better job in the fourth quarter and not get as conservative as the Falcons have been too often known to do, I think this is, a really positive start for the season. I was, Jarvis, I was prepared to come on this podcast and eat a ton of crow because I had not been giving the Falcons any love, any recognition that they had changed their ways over all summer long. And then it's just like, well, it's classic Falcons. Just like, why? Like the one time
crow they gave you, instead of crow, they gave you prime rib, man. Like, they want you to eat well, man.
I was looking forward to that plate of crow all week long, man. It's crazy.
That's the thing, man. Like, here we are. I know expectations were really low this game, right? I actually thought the Saints were going to win this game, but I think that there were a lot of people who were talking about as if this game was going to be a blowout. I did not believe that was going to be the case because I don't think the Saints are as good as people try to portray them to be. And I think, but I figure, since the Saints, I think they definitely have, I feel like they have a little bit more talent than the Falcons do on their roster now. But there is one thing though that this game did end up kind of how I thought it was going to be, right? I thought it was going to be a close game, but you just hate the fact that it ended up looking like a game that we've seen in previous years, and that including Dan Quinn, because that's the one thing that we want to get away from. That we don't want to watch games like this anymore, like because that's one of the reasons why Arthur Smith was brought into this team, because Dan Quinn used to continually tinkle games away at the end of those, and I think that you don't want to see that continue to be a trend because of what we saw in those first 3 quarters, like you mentioned. That's what we saw. I'm just like, all right, but unfortunately. They got to eat this L. Like, you got to eat this L and go back and watch the film and say, here's where I made a mistake. And they're going to have to start with Arthur Smith and go down to DNPs. And they just going to have to go down the roll call and say, hey, I could have done this. I could have done that. And please, AJ Terrell. Like, I don't want to see that no more, man. Like, you need to be a little bit more competitive out there on the other team's best wide receiver. Sorry. That's just what it is.
Yeah, guys, we could sit here all day, all afternoon, you know, feeling sorry for ourselves, but we'll take what we can get at this Falcon team.
Right.
Again, as Jarvis, you said, we've seen the Falcons blow these leads. It just hurts more when it's against the Saints, right?
Yeah, man.
It's
It's
just
just
like,
so annoying. Saints fans are so annoying. Yeah, I said it. Yeah,
mm,
y'all annoying. I'm sorry.
yeah,
And then the Who Dey
this,
chants in the stadium at the God, man, my stomach hurts, man. Like
yeah,
it really does. I don't know. I don't know what I'm gonna do, man. I don't know.
yeah, it's tough. So, guys, that's where we're gonna leave it. Sorry, that we couldn't come on here and do
Like
nothing but sing
we
the
don't
praises
have
of
no
the Falcons.
scriptures. We ain't got nothing to make you feel better. Like that
Yeah,
is what it is. Like sorry,
yeah.
I appreciate y'all, man.
But if you want more insight into this game, of course, check out Jarvis and Tanitra Batiste on the ATL Day Ones podcast, one of 3 shows on the Locked On Sports Atlanta podcast feed. You can find it on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. They'll be talking about this game. They'll also be talking about other things, the things that went right in Atlanta sports over the weekend, including Georgia and the Braves and all that. So you get that. You'll also be able to get more insight into this game all week long here on Locked On Falcons as well with myself. We'll have some guests on. Mark Zeno of A to Z will be on the pod tomorrow to give his thoughts on this game.
I
So
know that's
check.
gonna be spicy.
Yeah, I probably was tempting fate by asking Zeno before the game
you
started to come
You
on the
it's your fault,
podcast.
Eric.
So yeah, I'll take that L as well, guys. I'm sorry. But yeah, check out Locked On Falcons on all the same podcast platforms. You can check out Locked On Sports Atlanta, YouTube as well. And of course, you can check out Jarvis to get his thoughts on this game at Jarvis D90. I'm at Falc Fans. Jarvis, anything you want to say before we duck out of here?
Let's see what they do in LA.
Yep. Let's see what they do.
Yes, let's see what they do.